to that, I would mention that in Kenya, of course, the statistics that are given by NTSA is between 2.5 million to 3 million cars that are on the road. I also happen to have information from Japan, the cars that are exported from Japan. Japan exported 1.2 million cars last year, 1.2915. Kenya is number 5 in this list because UAE did 171,000, and then we have Russia, which did 120,000. Then we have Chile that did another additional maybe 111,000. And then we have one other country, and then Kenya did 80,000 units last year. These are cars that have been exported, used into the Kenyan country. Right. And therefore, just to give you that figure. Regarding the motorcycles, currently we have about 1.2 million motorcycles that are registered in the country. About 200,000 are out of the road because of various accidents and all that. And then we do have about 100,000 or 150 that are used by riders who are riding company delivery companies. And then we have 100,000 personal bikers. And then we have 800 plus, about 800,000, which are being used by boda riders in the country.
Now, based on those statistics, and Kana, you deal in the industry definitely.
Yes.
There have been quite some pronouncements by the government lately, you know.
Such as
the banning of importation of spare parts. Also, the directive to have only the government agencies, government institutions only buy locally assembled vehicles. How does that pan out for an industry, for the players in the industry like yourself?
Well, we have pros and cons on both sides. For the vehicle, I would say that the directive is good for the country as a whole. Okay, but I think you already know that 95% of the vehicles which are on the road are all used vehicles. Official sales for zero mileage cars is about 5%. And me being pushing, or me rather pushing Honda, the Honda brand, I have to fight it out with Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi, Isuzu. So our market share for brand new units is quite small. However, the Honda brand on the parallel import is huge. So the government, or rather the president's directive of only buying locally assembled units has cut me twice. How? More than 60% of my sales was to the government. So I have to make do with actually 40% of sales to the local market. However, having said that, we kind of support the president on this directive. Why? Because this is a step in the future. Some countries like South Africa are 100% locally manufactured cars. This directive has come in a bit late, but still not too late. You and me probably will have to tighten our belts and take this directive a bit hard. But it will definitely leave a good legacy for your and my kids. They will inherit a cleaner environment, you know, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yes.
Based on, I'll get back to you on how you're going to ensure that maybe you have a local assembly or something. But Dr. Kalua, could you tell us the effects of just having these second-hand cars or second-hand spare parts? What are the advantages or disadvantages?
Great advantage, one of the most important, is that the cars are affordable. So Kenyans are able to afford cheaper cars. The advantages are various on the road, because you can be able to do this just because we do not currently have a good or effective mass transport system, and therefore we would want to drive our own cars. Disadvantages are various. One, there is lack of creation of jobs. South Africa, if we all wanted to make it affordable for used cars and therefore used parts, is to go the South African way, where the imported car, which is used, is highly taxed. And the age limit because of emissions and so many other things, so that you make the car that is new more affordable, like in South Africa. And therefore, that would be a direction that would be taken. You remember the minister, the just immediate former minister for trade, banned the importation of used parts. And therefore, this is something that Kenyans need to understand. Of course, in buying new parts, institutions like Toyota, Honda, and others will be able to have more sales, but it also translates to safety. There is a big challenge in Kenya, just like in many African countries around. You find that the used cars, you just had, I mentioned, we are importing 80,000 cars a year. And therefore, that translates to close to 6,700 cars monthly.
Right.
Okay? In the month of November alone, Kenya imported 10,000 cars plus.
That is 2019.
2019.
Okay.
And going on and on. And therefore, the risk is that there are cars, the government has put in place for inspection of used motor vehicles. This must be done very, very effectively. And because there would be that tendency, maybe something is not very well checked, and especially on the African side, as opposed to other places where the inspection is done for the exporter and not for the importer. The parts, there's big danger in this, Betty. There are parts, and even in the classification of importation of parts, there are some parts like tyrodents, the brake systems. You cannot test the engine when it is being exported. There is a lot of miles because these things come mixed up in the containers. You have no capacity to do proper inspection, testing, to be able to be done secure. Some of the accidents that we are having in this country is not just the carelessness of our drivers. Unfortunately, we think and imagine that it is carelessness of drivers, but it is actually the parts that are coming in. There is no capacity to inspect all this, especially if you have an institution, only one that is doing the process of identifying, checking a container load when they are mixed up. So there are things that need to be done in a proper way. The same thing applies in motorcycles now that we are talking about automotive. You find that most accidents are not done. Some of the accidents, actually a big number, close to 30–40%, happen because the assembly process was not properly done.
Okay.
And therefore, you find that some bolts and nuts have been left out because the process of assembling this is not very well done. So these are things that we need to fix. I believe the automotive policy that has been put in place is going to put this on check, and so that Kenyans can be safe on the road. You wonder why, even after all efforts by NTSA in ensuring that there is safety, how come there is no reduction
in the
accidents in the country? And this is one of the space that we need to check and also be responsible for ourselves, that we are not just buying everything because it's cheap, instead of building also the local industry and the new parts space.
Right. Kana, it is said that as much as these used vehicles that are being imported are cheaper, the operational costs are higher, as well as the effect it has to the environment. Seeing that there's enough demand in Kenya, what is barring or preventing you from starting a local assembly here?
No, actually, that's a very good point you've noted. We are in the process of, talking to Japan to allow us, or rather give us a license to start a local assembly in Kenya. We are already in talks with the government, and we are talking to Japan as well. And we hope that 2020 would probably be a good start. Yes.
That 2020 will be a good start.
Yes, hope so.
And the consumption, do you think it will go down?
Not really. Not really.
You mean consumption
of the second-hand cars, the used cars?
Yeah. Well, you see now that's a part and a policy of the government to play it out. We are simply a cog, but we are trying hard to get into the SKD. Yes, first.
Now, Dr. Kalua, you are also a member of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and one of the challenges that KAM says that the industry faces is the lack of homologate, as in having cars designed specifically for Kenyans' needs, you know, having models that can only serve Kenyans' needs. Is that a direction that the industry needs to take?
Definitely. And in the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, I head the motorcycle sector. I'll give you an example of that and then take it up to the automobile.
Right.
You find like Honda took 5 years to build a motorbike based and done for Kenya. As a result of the 5 years of serious implementation process, serious study, what kind of oil is best for this. Running a motorcycle of Honda in Kenya is much cheaper than any other.
Okay.
But every other institution, all my members of the association are doing efforts to reduce this cost to be able to do something that is good for this. Making a car that is specific for a country is a must, because some of the cars that are imported in the numbers of the used cars, they will come with some oil in the gearbox that is not of the standard of the climate that is here. Some of these have stayed and overstayed in the car, and therefore you find that the car has a blown up in gearbox. You also find engines that are problematic as you move on. Even tires. There are tires that are meant for areas of different climatic conditions, like the snow and all that. Then you bring the tire here and you're in trouble because this has not properly checked that this is not the right tire for this place. And therefore, having a car that is made for the local market is definite. It is deliberate, including the consumption. For instance, you will not find a car that comes in from Japan with an engine that uses diesel, because our quality of oil is different. It cannot take some of this because there is that process that is in the engine that will not take up this kind of a process. So it's highly technical, and therefore working towards ensuring that the local market, the statistics, the standards, the research are done for a car that can be used locally. You know, you can get into a car and spend your 3 years, 5 years with a guarantee, and yet the used car, you may not be able to get a guarantee for this. And therefore, there is no value of money because you keep getting into garage, and even in our country, the system of garage is not even well done. And then even more important, in other countries like Japan, you're talking about UK, UAE, there is the annual or biannual motor vehicle test. We lack that here. Because this is only done for cars that are supposed to be for the cars that are commercial use, but the personal cars are not checked annually or biannually. And therefore, the parts that you're bringing that are substandard, the vehicle that is not well checked, the oil that is not regularly checked, you just try an engine and it is fine, it is moving. We dip our people in accidents. And we keep wondering, what are we not doing? NTSA must be supported to make sure that the process of local inspection is done so that Kenyans are safe and our level of age increases as we move on, because all matters, all issues matter.
Now, Kana, as he says about the coming up with models that work for the Kenyan space, where does this conversation start? Does it mean we need to have a national coordination center or authority for the automotive sector? Can it start there?
Well, not really. What we need to, what we need to do is make sure that the government and the motor industry, people from the motor industry, actually get together. Then only they can come up with policies that suit or are suitable for the entire population. So that way, I think the government has to lead. Yes.
The government has to take the lead.
Yes,
Where does
yes.
that conversation start?
And also to do that, we now have associations in the country. There is the Association for Parts Makers, there is Association for Motorcycles, there is Association for the commercial vehicles. In KAM, we have the automotive sector, very efficient, with all the parts department, the motorcycles, the
trucks and the
the
cars.
trucks, you know, all those. We need to strengthen those institutions because the improvement of these sectors can only be done by the sector players. They know what parts can be made locally. Currently, even in the motorcycle sector, we have already, there are institutions like my institution and other institutions in the motorcycle sector who have already started making parts locally. But there is no tax advantage at all. Even though they are producing up to about 7 to 9 parts locally, an importer who is doing assembly under a tree is earning the same profit. There is a 25 rebate percent for this kind of a process. So there needs to be tight, and I believe that this is going to be sorted out by the automotive policy, which I request the government to be able to push so that it can be done, so that Kenyans can start benefiting out of all this. Those sectors, the associations, will be able, you know, you will have people saying, okay, we can now produce tires locally, stop importing, increase the rate of tires. We can be able to make this. You know, we can gradually move from 0% of localization easily within at least 5 years into a level of 40% or 50%, depending on the sector of motorcycle or automobile. And the moment, because there are two ways, to grow it gradually or to slam instructions in some of all this as policy, and you will have everybody who is doing production of automobiles in different countries to come and set up the plant here, because this is going to be done. And we are now looking at a region that is EAC region. We are not only looking at Kenya.
Right.
So whichever country in EAC that is going to take the first step, my friend, the industry of automotive will change this country. The motorcycle is the lowest hanging fruit. Look at the 800,000 motorcycles. Look at the 6 million people that they are employing on a monthly basis. Look at the about 20 million Kenyans who are using motorcycles to travel every single day.
Right.
Imagine if just the 7 parts or 6 parts are implemented tomorrow. Within 3 months, Betty, we have employment for 4,000 people. Guaranteed.
4,000 people. That means that the sector has quite some potential.
Yes.
Really,
We
yeah?
have huge potential, yes, for sure.
And what is the government doing to ensure that it taps into this potential sooner rather than later? Kana?
I think the East African bloc, we have huge potential, but we have to be the first to initiate. First to initiate the SKD, first to initiate the lowering of the importation age, first to create policies that are going to not only benefit the exchequer, but even the users themselves. You see, you know, it is a big question whereby the government has banned, for example, the spare parts, the used spare parts. But it has to also think the other way, that there are so many, you know, tables that depend on the bread from this business. So I think it needs to come inafaa kuja pole pole, you know, so that they can even have or give time for the other sectors to absorb the deficit that is going to be left by the used parts business. So, as I said earlier, the government needs to lead.
It needs to lead.
Yes.
Let's
I
talk.
would say
go ahead.
just this one. Pure lack of coordination.
Okay.
The president issues instructions that we want to build the manufacturing sector. The Treasury is given the responsibility to build or to create policy that is able to establish the kicking off of localization. KAM presents budgetary proposals to the Treasury, to the Budget Committee and all that. 5 times consecutively. This goes back and forth. When it goes to Treasury, Treasury says that Ministry of Industrialization has not looked at this thing. Then there is a whole fight between Ministry of Industrialization, Ministry of Treasury. And yet it's a very simple thing. Since the time of C.S. Rotich into the current time, there is a process that you wonder. And then there is the EAC level. Instead of Kenya's position being one, because they will always say that we have done, we have not done, we are going to do this. The president, you remember, he called the team, the entire team of KM into Mombasa and agreed this is what we are going to do. Within 3 months, it shall be done. Where is it?
So
People are just dilly-dallying with the process instead of getting what is supposed to be done. I have given an example, a mere example. The policy on motorcycles, which can even be done in advance ahead of the automotive policy. If the 7 parts are implemented, already we would have, and this means bolting out of the EAC if we have to, because Kenya is ahead of the other countries. We have 4,000 Kenyans employed within 3 months. What else would we want?
That is definitely
These are
something
people
that
who may
needs
be
to be
sitting
looked
on what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And therefore, we need to have that human kind of a process. And where you have a problem, call Ministry of Industrialization, Ketiapa, Ministry of Treasury, Ketiapa, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers,
And the
players in motorcycle parts assemblers, the makers of motorcycles. Semeni hapa sasa.
So that a
Malizeni.
dialogue is had, you know.
The
and
dialogue
things
is
move.
hard. If there is a challenge, it is done. But then, Treasury watafanya, wale watafanya.
Okay.
And they are the same people who can be able to sort this out.
Okay.
So the president is seen to be saying one thing, and on the ground, the same people who are supposed to do something.
Definitely one voice
But
needs
I
to be
have,
spoken.
there is hope.
There is hope. Okay.
Yeah, we have Betty who understands the industry.
Okay.
We have the minister who had already, who has left, who had already done the proposal of the framework of the automotive policy. So there is
Right.
hope. I'm not saying this as if there is no hope,
There is
but
hope.
the hope is taking too long. It's running away.
Okay.
This is the problem.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so, and a lost opportunity is gone. So there is hope.
There is
and
hope.
there are people like me,
Okay.
and I believe many others like Kana, who are ready to change this country and make things happen, not just talk.
Okay.
This is just what we need to do.
Right. As we talk about growing the industry forward, is the human capacity there? Kana?
Human capacity.
Across the value chain, you know?
Well, of course, yes. I mean, you see, we have the talent. We have people who want to work, and there is always people are hungry to learn more. You see, so we have to provide a platform where they can fully expand their knowledge and test it. You see, we have, for example, we have the colleges, tertiary colleges in Kenya. We have the universities. They just don't dish out half-baked students. They are students who actually have the know-how, the technical skill. So it's just that we have to provide that platform, and we have investors who are interested in coming up and nurturing that talent. You see, so I think you know, the capacity is there for sure. Yeah.
Bringing up young talent, Dr. Kalua.
Yes, talent we do have. And not only today, but also in future. If you visit my Facebook page, you will see today I had 120 or 130 students from Jonathan Glog Primary School.
Okay.
And I was there because if you ask a normal young Kenyan, they will say, I want to become a member of parliament, I want to become a captain, I want to become a doctor. Why is that the case? Because students' tours are done in only parliament. They go to KICC, a tremendous place, of course, for the scenic issues, and then they go to the airport. We, the industry players, captains, I request, and I have requested on my Facebook page, come on, Let's open our institutions for young kids so that we can help them to make their careers. We have so much. Look at the qualifications. People who are qualifying on from automotive industry. There are many. The TVETs, Kenya is leading in many countries. We have many people. You don't have to have a degree to be able to work in this institution.
Right.
I employ close to 100 people at our facility, and they have livelihoods that is done. Unknown to you, they even making the motorcycles. We don't have places where people can actually service motorcycles very efficiently. It's an opportunity for creating jobs. One motorcycle rider, the one you see on the road, boda, that guy supports 8 people, 8 members of a family. A tremendous opportunity. So the job opportunity is there. The qualification for people who can be able to make a difference is there. And we can be able to make a tremendous difference.
Right. Do you ride to work, Dr. Kalua?
Oh, yes, I do. I make motorbikes. Of course, I have to ride for me to make time, especially mornings. Sometimes it gets very crazy. And it's cheap.
Okay.
It's efficient.
It's
People
fast.
fear bikes, but you have to train. The problem is you really have to train for you to be able to do that. There is nothing as enjoyable as riding in this city when you know what you're doing, and you have to invest in that.
You figure most of the complaints from motorists are just border people are disturbing us on the road, you know, maybe they're not getting training. What's the problem, Kana?
As Dr. Kalua said, it's right. It's just about training. And it's not that we want to stop that business, no.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis selling cars, we also support the motorbikes as well. But I think the government needs to come up with some kind of law to rein in rogue motorbikers. You see, as long as we have a system which is followed, I think we are good. Yeah.
Because, of course, when borders came in, there was an influx. Most people were just learning in their neighborhoods and taking a motorbike and riding. So maybe it's about time to, you know, streamline the sector.
Yes, yes.
I have, you know, this is a whole subject on its own. So if I start now, I think it will end tomorrow.
Okay.
I have a solution for the motorcycle sector.
Which is?
I have it. And I am looking for the minister so that I can make a presentation as we put together, and even ahead of the conference that is upcoming, so that we don't just scratch the surface. We deal with the process once and for all, including inspection of the motorcycles. And because we don't have a center locally, they need to be inspected through the dealerships of the various makers, so that everyone takes responsibility. A big percentage of the motorbikes are made under trees. Guys are given an opportunity to make 5 bikes per day, and therefore you go there, you have a headache, you forget 5 bolts that you are supposed to do, and you end up causing an accident because the guy just left out the bolt that is supposed to hold the bike to turn to the left. So you turn to the left and the thing will never
Just
turn
goes,
to the right.
yeah.
And people just die. And we are killing our own people just because we are not careful.
Substandard products.
And this can only be found out. A solution will not come from just the border riders. It has to start from the makers. Do we have a standard for making motorbikes in Kenya? What is the standard? Is it being adhered to? For you to qualify to have a specific amount of rebate from the government taxes, what will you have done? Are you making local parts? Are these parts known to be of good standard, or are they just expensive, and are you creating job opportunities? So it is vast. It is vast. And there are so many opportunities, including gadgets, so that you can have a sticker or an e-card on every bike and use the cameras on the road, so that any bike that is said to be committing some funny things, it is picked on the system. It is not this issue of just saying because someone had a jacket that is yellow and KMD whatever, you can never get the guy.
Right.
But if a guy crosses the light and there is the electronic gadget on the machine, that guy can be found at 11 or 2. He crossed the lights. And then the government embraces this institution that is employing and supporting 6 million people, that more
That is
than 20 million Kenyans are using the motorbikes daily. Respect them, set the rules, get earning out of this. And then, for that, the government has an opportunity of collecting not less than 1.2 billion on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Tax, easy, at about just 30 shillings. The guys make about 1,000 shillings daily. 1,000 shillings on a daily basis. 30 shillings is not an issue. They will support.
Okay.
So these and other issues that have been said by my colleague are things that we can change this country.
Things that
and
we can change.
Yes.
Right. Gentlemen, we are running out of time here, but I will give you just 30 seconds each to give us your final remarks, Kana. Okay.
I think I'll give the opportunity to Dr. Kalua first.
Okay, no problem.
Well, I think the country has a lot of potential, and having all these problems like the coronavirus and the locusts and all, I hope and pray to God that this come to an end. We have a lot of potential and we can move forward.
Right.
Yeah, provided we all together.
We will come together.
Yes.
I would say that the automotive sector in Kenya has got very low-hanging fruits that as a country we can engage ourselves into immediately and sort out the mess of unemployment in this country.
Right.
I suggest from the bottom of my heart, we must fast-track the automotive policy. There is no reason that is valid that this document can be waiting for such a long time, and we have not done it. We can do it, and we can be able to change this country. I want to congratulate the people in the sector. They can employ so many people. They only lack support. That must be done, and I suggest the time is now. Because this is our country, we can change our country, and we can fix things.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think that's a good note to end this conversation. Well, that was Dr. Isaac Kalua. He's the chairman at Motorcycle Assemblers Association of Kenya, as well as Farid Kana, the general manager at Honda Kenya, discussing matters the automotive industry and how to grow it. We now move to other news. Local businesses have started to feel the heat of the deadly coronavirus, with the Stanbic monthly index showing a major drop in business confidence in February. The purchasing managers index for February is recorded at 49.0, the lowest reading since November 2017. This comes as Industrialization Ministry formed a multi-sectoral team to monitor the impact of COVID-19 on corporate Kenya and offer mitigation measures. Take a look.
What started as a simple virus in Wuhan, Hubei province,